Okay, so we have reached a point where it's time for me to make more known the true understanding of what time is so we can properly start understanding and applying these concepts and techniques. Because when people are saying, oh, physics that defies space time, they're not even understanding what time is, because in the sense of where they're thinking that time can warp, they're basically saying the same thing twice, because they're saying, oh, to bend space time. They're basically, because when you're saying to bend space and time, you're basically looking to bend two things that aren't even really necessarily expected to be bendable in the manner of which you're expecting, because space itself is just space, so it has no occupication. It just remembers whatever is there. So to bend space, you don't bend space because space doesn't move, it's just there. So you can't bend space because space is just a and if the space is occupied, then it's not space itself unless it's available as space. So you can't bend space, because if you're bending space, then you're going to take away space from being available in a sense or theory. And you can't bend time because time isn't a thing to bend, because time is relative to what we expect to be going on. So to say that to bend space and time is the same thing as to say to bend what we expect is actually going on. That's already there, so you can't really. So all you're saying that we're looking to bend is something that's already there, because space time isn't even anything except for what is actually there itself, or what we expect to be there. So we have a huge misconception of space time, because when people are talking about, oh, we're warping space time, we're bending space time, but you can't necessarily bend space time, because they're not even they're not, they don't exist. They're not anything. They're just a circumstance. So how is it that someone's going to say, "Oh, we're going to bend a circumstance"? That's like saying, "Oh, let's bend a circumstance that, let's say that I'm going left." That doesn't make sense to say, "Oh, let's bend when you going left," because that's a circumstance, me going left. It doesn't make sense to say, "Oh, bend going a person going left." Same thing as to bend space and time, or I mean, to bend. Um, let's say for another good example, space and time, something that's a circumstance. What would be another circumstance? To bend hot and cold. See, hot and cold, you don't really bend hot or cold, because it's already a circumstance. It's you don't. I mean, all you're really saying is it's to bend fire or cold, right? See, it doesn't make sense, because fire and coldness are a circumstance. All right. So you don't necessarily bend a circumstance. Another good example, let's say, because when you're saying to bend space and time, you're saying, let's see, some other circumstances. Like it's raining. Oh, what would happen if we bended raining and hailing? Bending. If what if we bended snow and rain? See, that doesn't make sense. See, all we would expect for if somebody bent snow or rain, a circumstance, is that circumstance is just going to be bent. But now it's relative to what is the circumstance. So, well, rain and snow are a circumstance that we actually know of. So when you're trying to bend space and time, it comes down to the correlation of what is expected, what is the circumstance that we know of. So it's not anything, because it's dependent on a circumstance. Depends on what is the circumstance. So you can't bend anything without being given what is the circumstance. So that's why no one can make sense of, oh, I wonder if black holes bend space-time and put a hole through the fabric of space-time, but you don't. They're not understanding what time is, what space is. Space is just empty storage where something can be put, stored. Remember, it's memory. Time is just a circumstance of what's actually going on. So when they're saying to bend space and time, they're saying to bend memory, to bend storage, which doesn't make sense for somebody to say, oh, we're going to bend memory, we're going to bend storage and time. So time is a circumstance or an event we expect to be going on. So they're saying to bend an event or circumstance we expect to be going on. Okay? So time is always relative to, well, what is it that you're expecting to bend? Because time itself isn't anything. It's relative to the circumstance. So based on when you go to Google, it says the indefinite. This is one of the definitions. There's a few of them because there is a few variations of time. So anyway, the main one is the indefinite continued progress of existence and events in the past, present, and future regarded as a whole. So that's a pretty good definition, and I think that they're getting at with the continued progress of existence is consciousness. So only through you knowing, having any sort of consciousness or awareness of your surrounding does time ever even begin to exist. Because that's your perception of time. Okay, so we have perception of time. Okay, so time is... The reason that time is so mysterious is because time is not always the same. Okay, the time that you're experiencing is different than the time that I'm experiencing because your circumstances that you're going through and that's going on for you are different in all sorts of ways. Let's start off with the most obvious reason. First of all, you're connected to your own brain. So first of all, you're already perceiving your own thoughts, your own ideas, your own brain. That's your own time. So everybody is given their own amount of time. So time exists when your mother gives you time, because that's how you receive time. That's how it begins to exist. How did I become a part of time? How did I even know anything about time? Because your mom is the one who gives you time. So time is given to everybody. So everybody has a certain amount of time for their own self. So everything that is going on throughout your time is different than everything that's going out through my times, because time is relative to everybody's own consciousness and how they perceive time, because time only exists when it's that we have a perception of what's going on, or what we expect to be going on, or what we expect to have been going on. So time for you is not the same for me, because what you expect to be going on is not the same as what I expect to be going on. And that is why everybody has such a big misconception of what is time, because it's not the same thing. It's always different. Everybody, when you're deciding to do things, if you watch this video, that's how you're spending your time, okay? Because you get to choose how to spend your time, what you want to be going on. Because your mother is the one who gave you time. She gave you a brain. So when she gave you a brain, she's the one who gave you time. She allowed for you to rule over what you expect to be going on. What do you expect to be going on in the past? What did you expect to be going on in the future? What do you expect to be going on right now? That's why you're doing what you're doing. I'm doing what I'm doing, because it's relative to my time. So time is always different based on who perceives it and what you perceive of it, because anybody can perceive anything to be going on relative to what they can actually think of. So what is time is something that is given to you by your mother. That's the only way time is created. Who creates time? Your mother created time for you because that's where you got time from. See, that's how you perceive time. That's how you get time is through your mom because that's the only thing that's what we know of. Who That's what we know of. Everything else is not that we know of. We don't know of that unless we know of it. From what we know of, your mom is the one who creates time. So time can be generated. Money can be generated. It's no surprise. So what we expect to be going on can be generated. Time can be generated because your mothers, females, can keep creating more time, more brains, which is more perception of time, the ability to perceive what's actually going on. What do we expect to be going on? Or what do we want to be going on? Or what do we want to happen? So what is time it's relative to who's perceiving it, because it's always different. Time is never the same, even though it's relatively the same because the circumstances always come down to one circumstance or another. It's always still different. Like time itself, even though 9 p.m. happens over and over and over and over the same time every day, it doesn't change the fact that it's always different. What's going on at 9 p.m. every single day, it's always something different. Even though it's still the same thing. It's still just 9 p.m. But it's because there's more circumstances that we expect to be going on. Because it's a time map. Because it's what we know of. It's a circumstance that we know of that we expect to be going on. So we expect for this circumstance to continually keep happening. So we correlate the time clock, the time map, for easy reference to a particular location. It's almost like GPS of what we know of. So time itself is not necessary. It is dependent on an event going on. So it's relative to what event is going on, if there's anything even going on. So time doesn't even exist if nobody even has a perception of time. If no one even has perception of anything going on, or if nobody even has perception of anything of what will be going on. So if no one has any sort of perception of what is going on, or consciousness itself, but the higher form of consciousness is to be able to perceive time. So without being able to perceive time, without ever being able to perceive what is going on, time doesn't exist. Because if you don't know what's going on, time don't exist. Because that's what time is. I mean, granted, time may still be going on, and you may not know what time is. But if there is, in all actuality, nothing going on where, nothing is being... If there's nothing for anything to be conscious of, there's no consciousness whatsoever, then time doesn't exist. So it's dependent is if there is consciousness or someone who... So time only begins to exist when there's a perceiver of time, someone who can perceive what is going on. So the only ones that have the highest level of perception of time are human beings. Now, animals still do have a little bit of a perception of time, but just not on such a high scale of to where they know, oh, that's Mars out there, because that's a relative to understanding of what's actually going on. Time, because it's our perception of time. So animals don't have that deep a perception to know, oh, there's Mars, there's Jupiter, because they can't perceive time that deep. But now, granted, they can perceive time at a small level of, like, they can just kind of know how to walk around or whatever it may be, or have that extra sense of whatever they have an ability for. But that's about all, because they're not. We're the ones who are able to perceive time, because that's the only time that time is actually even exists or is created, is if there's a perceiver that actually starts to perceive time. So time doesn't exist necessarily just being conscious. Because like spiders, they're conscious, but they can't perceive time. So being conscious doesn't mean that you can perceive time. Okay, the only thing that makes you be able to perceive time or know what's going on is if you yourself are able to know what's going on. So no matter what, you can perceive time because you know what's going on. Whether or not you know that you know what's going on, you know what's going on because it's happening right in front of you and you're navigating through it. So you do know what's going on because you have perception of time. So same with animals. They are navigating. They know what's going on, but they have a more limited perception of time. Like for example, maybe they only have they can kind of perceive what's going to happen up to maybe 1 second or 5 seconds ahead of them for the most part, or 20 seconds, whereas we can go up to like 10 years, 100 years. You know, we can kind of meditate throughout what is going to happen throughout our whole life. That's because it's our perception of time, what's going on. So they don't have a deep enough perception of time. It's not unless you begin to have a perception of time, because it's through the brain. Only with a brain, or I mean, even artificial intelligence can have a perception of what's going on, in consciousness too. So AI is a form. We're a form of AI itself, but we're just one of the highest levels of. Actually, we are most likely the highest level of AI, even though we create more powerful AI than us. It's just that it has its pros and cons because they don't exist in the same manner of we are. We're more realistic, so we have more enjoyment. You know, we can feel things. We because they don't have the chemical, biological, or what is it, biochemical. They don't have the biochemical creation within them, which is what makes them different. So maybe they do have the ability to take control of things, but we're the ones who created them to begin with, so we're the ones who potentially should be controlling them anyway, so it's just an extension of us to begin with. So it's not like it's them, it's still just us. So yeah, time is different for everybody because what's going on for me is not what's going on for you. Okay? So that's what makes time so confusing, is everybody tries to think that time is the same thing for everybody, but the truth is that time is different for every single person.